There are moments in life when everything we built comes crashing down, and in that moment, we ask ourselves, is this the end? But I came to tell you today, it's not the end, it's the opportunity to begin again. What do you do when the dream dies? What do you do when the marriage fails? What do you do when the business collapses? When the door closes? When the people you trusted walk away? Listen to me. Failure is not final unless you refuse to begin again. I want you to write this down. God is not committed to where you've been. He's committed to where you're going. And the most powerful thing God ever gave man, outside of salvation, is a second chance. That means today you have the legal right in the kingdom to begin again. You may have lost something, but you didn't lose everything. You might have failed at the job, the marriage, the vision, the discipline, but hear me, you didn't fail at life. What failed was an attempt, not your assignment. The enemy wants you to confuse a chapter with the whole book. But I came to tell you, this is not the end of your story. Failure is not the grave, it is the classroom. And if you're still alive, you just graduated. What we call failure, God often calls formation. What we see as a dead end, God sees as a redirection. Listen carefully. He does not define you by what you lost, but by what you survived. And if you're still breathing, then heaven. The problem is, we live in a world that worships success but is allergic to process. You see the fruit in other people's lives and think they never fell, but you never saw their pruning. You saw the crown but missed the crushing. Let me remind you, even Jesus fell under the weight of the cross, but he got back up and kept walking toward his assignment. And if the Son of God could stumble but not quit, what's your excuse? The prodigal son didn't just waste money, he wasted trust, wasted time, wasted dignity. But when he came back home, the father didn't even mention the failure. He didn't say, where's the money? He said, bring the robe, bring the ring, bring the sandals. Why? Because the moment he returned, the past no longer had permission to define his identity. You better hear what I'm saying. God is not intimidated by your mistakes. He's not surprised by your weakness. He calculated your detours and still wrote your name in the book. You didn't disappoint him. You're just now discovering how much you need him. Let me tell you something. Even dirt has a destiny. That's why God made man out of it. He specializes in taking mess and turning it into a masterpiece. He took Moses, a fugitive, a stutterer, and turned him into a deliverer. He took Rahab, a prostitute, and made her a lineage carrier for the Messiah. He took a criminal on a cross and gave him paradise in one sentence. Don't tell me God can't use broken people. But here's what you must understand. Failure only becomes final when you agree with it. The moment you accept the lie that you're finished, you lock yourself out of your future. You empower what should have been a moment to become your master. But you were never meant to camp where you fell. You were meant to rise from it. Dust doesn't define you. Breath does. And God has not withdrawn his breath from you. You say, but I lost everything. Listen, starting over doesn't mean starting from scratch. You are not who you were. You've got experience now. You've got wisdom now. You've got scars, yes, but your scars are not signs of shame. They're evidence of survival. You didn't fail to succeed, you failed to learn how to fight. So fight back, stand up, rebuild, write again, apply again, love again, lead again, trust again, because the end is not the end. It's the beginning of who you were always meant to become. And if God is for you, who dares to count you out? Let me tell you something that religion rarely teaches. God is not looking for perfect people. He's looking for available vessels. And those vessels, more often than not, are cracked, scarred, misunderstood, dismissed, forgotten, but still available. What the world throws away, God picks up. What men call broken, heaven calls usable. That's why when something falls apart in your life, it doesn't mean God is finished. It often means He's just getting started. People will disqualify you based on what you've lost, but God will promote you based on what you've survived. There's something sacred about being shattered, because God doesn't build His greatest works with polished trophies. The woman with the alabaster jar didn't come to Jesus whole. She came desperate, shamed, stained. Her tears didn't come from perfection. They came from pain. But what did Jesus say? Wherever the gospel is preached, her story will be told. Her worship came out of her wound. Her oil came out of her breaking. There would be no fragrance if she hadn't shattered that jar. You want your life to smell like favor? Then don't be afraid to be broken. I've seen it. God will let everything crumble just to rebuild you stronger. He'll let relationships end to restore your identity. He'll allow rejection to teach you authority, because if the platform crushes you, it means you were never ready for it. But if the pit prepares you, then nothing can stop you. God is not interested in how strong you appear. He's interested in how surrendered you are. Sometimes God will allow your image to be shattered so your identity can be born. Because too many of us are still trying to be who we think the world wants us to be. But when life strips you of your titles, your followers, your filters, your applause, what's left is what God can actually use. The authentic you. The you that prays in the dark and bleeds in silence. That version of you is dangerous to hell. Don't despise your fragments. Your fragments tell a story. There's wisdom in your wounds. There's healing in your history. There's strategy in your scars. You think your mistakes disqualify you? No, they actually position you. Because when God uses someone who's been through it, they don't just speak from information, they speak from revelation. And that's what changes lives. You see, there's a reason Jesus chose fishermen, tax collectors, rebels. He didn't call the polished, He called the willing. And when He fed the 5,000, what did He tell the disciples to do after everyone ate? Gather the fragments that remain. Why? Because even leftovers have value in the kingdom. So hear me, you are not wasted. You are not too far gone. You are not too messy. What men threw away, God is gathering. What you call trash, He calls treasure. And if you'll place those broken pieces in His hands, He won't just restore you, He'll repurpose you. You are more usable now than you've ever been. Because you've cried, because you've failed, because you've bled, because you've lived. Now you carry what many never will, the oil that only comes through pressing. So take your pieces, bring them to the potter, and watch what only He can build. Let me speak this into your spirit. Time does not erase what God deposited in you. You may have delayed, you may have walked away, you may have gotten distracted, discouraged, even disqualified in your own mind. But what heaven placed inside you before you were born is still intact. It has not expired, it has not evaporated, it has not been revoked. What God gave you in eternity cannot be undone by a few broken years in time. That's why even if you feel behind, even if you feel like it's too late, I came to announce what's in you is still alive. You just have to wake it up. There are people walking around, breathing air, functioning, producing, parenting, working, yet they're empty on the inside because they've silenced the voice that once called them forward. Not because the calling stopped, but because life screamed louder. Divorce screamed louder, debt screamed louder, failure screamed louder. You start believing that just surviving is your story, but hear me. You were not designed to survive life. You were created to impact it. And the beautiful mystery of God is this: He hides eternal assignments inside fragile people. And no matter how far off track you go, He never rewrites the assignment. He reroutes the journey. Jonah ran, but the call didn't change. Elijah hid in a cave, but the mission still stood. God is patient with your delay, but He is relentless about your destiny. Listen to me. Your delay does not cancel your deposit. That dream you buried because it hurt too much to look at, it's still breathing beneath the surface. That vision you had as a child before the world taught you limits, it's not gone. It's just sleeping under layers of fear, shame, and routine. You didn't outgrow it. You just stopped feeding it. And anything you stop feeding will shrink, but it won't die until you decide to bury it. Let me say this with clarity. No one can cancel what they didn't create. So stop handing people the pen to your life story when God already wrote the script. They didn't write the blueprint. They don't have the authority to close the chapter. And if you're still asking for validation from voices that never believed in you, you will forever question your worth. I don't care if you're 20, 40, 60, or 80. As long as you're still breathing, you're still becoming. The problem is, we keep checking the clock instead of checking the throne. We think we've missed our time, but God lives outside of time. What you think is over, He calls on time. Moses didn't begin his assignment until he was 80. Caleb asked for a mountain when he was 85. Stop letting age, stage, or statistics rob you of obedience. It's not about how fast you got there. It's about what's still waiting when you do. There are nations that haven't heard your voice yet. There are souls attached to your obedience. There are lives that only your story can unlock. So you don't get to quit just because you're tired. There is something inside you that time can touch. And here's the truth. Your next breakthrough won't come from doing something new. It'll come from saying yes to something old, something sacred, something you thought was over. Pick it up again. Dust it off. Speak to it. Pray over it. Stand over it like Jesus stood over Lazarus and shout, "Come forth!" Because what looked dead is only sleeping. You've waited long enough. Heaven is still holding the blueprint. And now's not the time to question if you're ready. Now's the time to say, "I'm available." Hear me clearly, in the kingdom of God, death is not the end. It is the beginning of multiplication. What we often mourn as loss, God marks as activation. Until a thing dies, it cannot release its greater dimension. Nothing in God truly lives until it first passes through the grave. We want resurrection, but we fear burial. We want glory, but we resist the cross. But there is no crown without crucifixion. There is no fullness until something is surrendered. Jesus said, unless a grain of wheat falls into the ground and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it produces many. You see, the seed is only powerful once it disappears. You're still trying to hold on to visibility, to reputation, to comfort, to control. But God says, until you let it go, I can't let it grow. You're afraid of dying to what you built, but God is calling you into what He birthed, and the two cannot coexist. Let me tell you something most churches won't say. God will kill what you idolize. He will bury what you refuse to surrender, because He loves you too much to let you build a tower that leads to your name instead of His kingdom. Abraham had to lay Isaac on the altar, not because God wanted to steal the promise, but because He wanted to see if Abraham loved the gift more than the giver. The test wasn't about Isaac dying. The test was about Abraham dying to his own desire to possess what belonged to God. There are things in your life that will not resurrect until you release them. Some of you are still grieving something God buried on purpose. You thought it was the devil taking from you, but sometimes it's God subtracting so He can multiply. You're mourning a job, a relationship, an opportunity, a timeline. But what if God buried it to protect you? What if He allowed it to die to invite you into something deeper? Resurrection doesn't happen to what's barely living. It happens to what's fully gone. That means you got to stop trying to keep things alive that God already signed the death certificate for. Stop resuscitating expired seasons. Stop praying for things to come back that were never designed to stay. The tomb is not a place of punishment. It is the womb of your next chapter. It's where God allows the old to die so that true can be born. You say you want to rise, but are you willing to fall? You want the light, but are you willing to endure the dark? Do you understand that before there was an open tomb, there was a closed door, a sealed stone, a silence in the earth? That's the space between surrender and manifestation. That's where most people quit. But if you can survive the silence, you'll experience the shaking. If you can survive the burial, you'll witness the breakthrough. Sometimes God will strip you of every comfort, every crutch, every applause, just to teach you that you are not defined by what surrounds you, but by what's been deposited inside you. And that fire can only be revealed through pressure. Diamonds are made in the dark. Oil is produced under crushing. Wine comes from the press. Resurrection is always preceded by something dying. So what in you needs to die? What in your life needs to be buried? Not so you lose it, but so it can live in a way you never imagined. This is not the end of you. This is the end of what cannot carry you where you're going. You will rise, you will breathe again, you will stand again. But first, you must release what no longer serves your assignment. Don't fear the death of what's no longer needed. Embrace the resurrection that's waiting on the other side. Let me speak directly to the lie that's been choking your momentum. Starting small means you're insignificant. That is a deception straight from the pit. In the kingdom of God, the smallest seed carries the greatest potential. The mustard seed is tiny, barely visible, but when it grows, it becomes a tree that gives shelter. That means what begins in obscurity often ends in overflow. So stop despising the day of small beginnings. Stop cursing your own process because it doesn't look impressive yet. God never builds skyscrapers from the top down. He digs deep first. And when you feel like nothing is visible, it might just mean He's establishing your foundation. What you call delay, He calls depth. What you call slow, He calls secure. And in a generation addicted to quick success, to instant platforms, to microwave anointing, God is still looking for those who are willing to grow in silence before they shine in public. Don't get distracted by how far others seem to be. The kingdom doesn't measure progress by applause. It measures it by alignment. A tree planted by the water doesn't need a crowd to clap for its roots. It just keeps drawing from the source. And when the drought comes, the ones who grew fast with no depth will wither. But the ones who were hidden, who were faithful when no one watched, who stayed when others quit, they will stand tall when the storm hits. Let me tell you something real. Every giant started as a beginner. Every mentor was once a student. Every general was once unsure. You cannot skip the stage of being unknown. You cannot bypass the awkward, the uncomfortable, the unseen, because that's where identity is forged. That's where integrity is tested. That's where you learn to hear the whisper of God when the world is silent. And I know why God starts small, so that when you rise, no one can take the credit, not your resume, not your background, not your social circle. So when it happens, they'll have no choice but to say, this had to be God. That's why He let you begin without support. That's why He hid you. That's why the doors didn't open too soon, because He wasn't just preparing the blessing. He was preparing you. So stop waiting until you feel big to begin. Start with what you have. Start where you are. Speak even if your voice shakes. Build even if only one shows up. Move even if your feet feel heavy. You don't need everything to start. You just need the faith to take one step. Because God breathes on the small and turns it into something unshakable. There comes a time when you must stop praying for a door to open and walk toward the wall like it's already been commanded to fall. Faith does not sit back and wait for feelings. Faith moves with confidence, even when clarity is absent. You've cried, you've fasted, you've journaled, you've talked yourself in and out of it 100 times. Now God is saying, I've given you enough. Walk. Let me be very clear. Clarity is not a prerequisite for obedience. Some of you are waiting for perfect conditions before you move. But heaven never promised comfort, it promised conquest. And you cannot conquer what you refuse to confront. The Israelites were not told to wait for dry ground before stepping into the Jordan. The water didn't part until their feet touched it. Sometimes miracles Don't show up until you do. This is not the season for more excuses. This is not the time for endless confirmations. You already know what God told you. You already saw the vision. You've already had the dream. You've already been stirred. You've heard it in your sleep, felt it in your bones, ignored it long enough. Now is the time to act. You see, there is a danger in delay. Every day you wait to act in obedience, you give ground to fear. Fear feeds on hesitation. Fear grows in silence. But when you move, fear shrinks. When you decide, fear breaks. And some things you're praying against will only be defeated once you step forward. David didn't wait for Goliath to get tired. He ran toward him. He didn't negotiate. He didn't calculate. He moved. And that's where the power was released, in the motion. I'm talking to somebody right now who's been sitting on a business idea, a ministry calling, a reconciliation, a bold conversation, but you're letting what if rob you of what could be. God does not bless hesitation, He blesses obedience. Delayed obedience is still disobedience. So move, write the book, make the call, start the project, walk into the meeting, apply again, try again. This is the hour where heaven is backing bold steps. Not safe steps, not politically correct steps, but steps birthed out of conviction. You don't need another prophecy, you need execution, because what God is about to do in your life won't happen by waiting, it will happen by walking. So move before the waters part, before the people applaud, before the outcome is guaranteed. Just move and watch heaven respond. So here we are, at the edge of a decision, at the doorway of destiny, standing between who you've been and who you're becoming. You've heard the call. You've felt the stirring, you've sensed the shift, and now it's no longer a matter of if, it's a matter of will you. Will you rise from the ashes of delay? Will you believe again after the disappointment? Will you move forward though your hands still tremble? Will you begin again? Not because it's easy, but because it's divine. You are not here by accident. This moment is not random. Heaven has orchestrated this intersection in time to awaken the warrior inside you, to remind you that the fight is still worth it, the dream is still valid, and your voice still matters. Don't let what broke you become what defines you. Don't let who left you decide how far you go. Don't let your past failures have the final word. The comeback is not optional, it's inevitable, because there's too much in you. Too many people connected to your obedience. Too much oil on your life for you to die in the wilderness. So begin again with bruised knees, with tired hands, with a scarred heart, with trembling faith. Begin again, not for perfection, but for obedience. Begin again, because God never canceled what He called. You are not starting from scratch, you are starting from strength, strength built through the tears. Wisdom earned in the silence, faith forged in the fire. This is not the end. This is the beginning of again. And again is enough. So I say to you, stand up, wipe your face, square your shoulders, breathe deep, and go forward. The next chapter is not waiting on God, it's waiting on you. Good luck. Go with boldness, go with faith, and may heaven smile on your every step. Thank you, and may you never ever be the same again.